Welcome back, everyone, to the latest episode of Unclassified. I am America's Mayor, Ben Wheeler, and I'm joined with teen heartthrob Preston Stewart. And it's a different episode than usual because, as you recall, we talked about Venezuela, we talked about everything last episode, which happened in the middle of the week. But this week, I am interviewing Preston. We're talking about everything he did in Ukraine, what he was up to, who he met, who he didn't meet, what he did, what he didn't do.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into the bottom of it. But Preston, you've now been back for about a week. Is it good to be home?
It is good to be home, man. It's a lot warmer. It's frigid in Ukraine, and knock on wood, we actually Ukraine. We're recording this on the 9th. Overnight, there was a pretty significant attack across Ukraine. 4 dead, 20 plus wounded. Just fortunate that didn't happen while we were there. There were a couple of different strikes, and we went through some areas that historically have been hit pretty hard, and just luck of the draw. So it's look, it's good to see that in person. I guess it makes the news more realistic, if that makes sense, more than just talking to the people actually walking the ground. But yeah, man, good to be home. Happy to be back in Tennessee.
Is there anything you miss from Ukraine that you wish you had in Tennessee?
The people are awesome across the board. Not the Tennessee people are awesome too, but just everyone I met, from civilians to a lot. We spent most of our time with military, and from civilians to military, everybody was just great and just good people. So I miss them. I want to spend more time with them.
Nice. Well, so to start, let me ask you, where did you go in Ukraine? Do you have a map for us?
Yes. I think this would be helpful. We'll do a quick overview of kind of the travel, because it's no joke getting there. So I left on the 27th, December 27th, came back on January 4th. So about 8 days, a little over a week. And it's madness getting there. So you fly the way we went, and I think this is kind of a common way. You fly into Warsaw, and then you take a train from Warsaw to Kyiv. This is like, I'll do a fancy ruler here. As the crow flies, 700 kilometers. Like, this is a big country. And that's once we get to Kyiv, that was like we were going another 600 kilometers to actually get near the front.
Jesus.
So it's not easy to get to, but I flew into Warsaw, and met a guy there. His call sign is Legion. He's an American volunteer that works now in the 1st Corps of the National Guard, Azov. And he helped piece everything together. So it's pretty daunting to go into a war zone, just in terms of like, where do you go and who do you talk to, and when do you go certain places.
Mm-hmm.
He's been there so many times back and forth now, and has so many high-level connections that it really helped kind of pave the way to where we needed to go. So I don't know what's happening on the screen here with this plane, but
I was going to ask. I don't know what that is.
I'm not fancy enough to do that. But we flew into Warsaw, met up in Warsaw, trained to Kyiv, overnight train. It's like 17 hours to do all this kind of madness. And we got into Kyiv early in the morning on the 29th, and then immediately headed east. So the focus of the trip was getting out here to meet some of the units in the east. So we drove from Kyiv to Kharkiv, which is out here in the northeast. And this is an area that generally gets hit pretty hard. Fortunately, while we were there, it didn't. We had some air raid sirens, but had a peaceful night of sleep there. Traveled down then to Izium, Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Dnipro, back to Kharkiv for a handoff, Kyiv, and then out. So we kind of made this loop through the east as we went. But the whole focus was getting down here into this area, and it's not easy to get out there.
So I assume Kharkiv and Sloviansk are hours apart from each other. How far would you say it is?
We left Kharkiv. So part of the challenge is these are not big roads. All right. So this is a lot of like 4-lane split interstate going from Kharkiv to Kyiv.
Hmm.
and pretty open roads. Now it was snowing and icy roads the whole time, which is terrifying. We drove at night, and Legion was like, at one point he was getting a little tired. So he said, "Hey, would you mind driving?" Which is a bad idea for him. I'm a bad
They let you
driver.
drive. They
Oh
let you
yeah,
drive.
these are military vehicles. Um, so when I say
Oh,
military, it's a civilian SUV that is assigned to the military. So the one we were in, for instance, was assigned to a specific military unit, which means you don't have essentially means you don't have laws.
right.
You you uh, you take precedence over everything. Red lights, stop signs are optional. There's no such thing as a speed limit. Police have to get out of your way. So you can kind of go however fast you want, which is beneficial. Um, but the steering wheel was on the right side, which is a problem for me. Um,
Yeah.
not That's not the case with all vehicles in Ukraine, but for Legion's truck it was, and that's a problem. Um, to figure it out at night on icy roads.
Do you drive with your headlights on, or do you drive with them
Yeah,
off to avoid drones?
the entire time was headlights on. So again, very commercial traffic. Just like this is like driving a stretch of highway in the United States, with the occasional gas station that's been blown up. Very limited kind of military checkpoints. They're just not really out here as much.
Hmm.
Um, and there is a drone threat throughout the country. But what you're talking about, like being spotted by drones, is more out here in the east. And even there, we were driving headlights on. So really, up until Kharkiv, things were pretty normal. Like you could look out the window and think that you were in any other part of Europe per se. But then in Kharkiv, it definitely started to change. There was a curfew in place. We couldn't find a hotel to stay. Um, Ended up shacking up in a hotel around midnight, 1 a.m. And it's pretty shut. It was quiet. So there's when that curfew goes into place, military does not apply. We could still be out, which we needed to be because we had to find a place to sleep. And it's just weird to be in it's like apocalyptic in a way to be in a big city where there's just nobody out.
Right.
Um, a lot of lights were off there. They have some power issues. And I mean, you can see how close Kharkiv is to the Russian border. These guys catch a lot of missiles, drones, and glide bombs. They get hit pretty hard out there. So there's definitely a change in attitude by the time we got to Kharkiv. But just a quick night there, and we had 3 vehicles, I think 5 guys total. Pretty quickly headed south, then towards Izium, and then you're in the war zone. Then at that point,
Right. Interesting. And so when you go into these places, I assume you're always with the military, so there's no question. But otherwise, if say you had gotten split apart from the military during curfew, um, what is your way out of that? Is there like you just explain, or were you at risk? You always had to make sure you were attached to a military
oh,
member, or my
yeah, I
understanding
made
is that you were kind of like Beyonce there, though.
so I was always with members of the Ukrainian military. I was never
Got it.
without. And I in retrospect, that's the only way I would have done it because of that. I did not have. I started down the process of applying for press credentials. I had some friends recommend that, and the guys I was with said you don't have to worry about that because you're with military. That will
Hmm.
kind of supersede anything. The press credentials will help you if you get pulled over or questioned. Say, why the hell is there an American driving through Eastern Ukraine? Um, or like when we were trying to get to the train station the last night, it was a midnight train, and it just clicked all of a sudden that like we're trying to request an Uber or a taxi after curfew, and
Mm,
like you know, gave the guy a nice tip. But that puts you in a bit of a tough spot. I don't know that I would have been able to navigate that kind of thing without an association with the military. Um, so it's possible, but you'd probably have some hiccups. There's probably, honestly, they'd probably stop you at a checkpoint. Say like, no, like what the hell are you doing here?
right. And so, did you go into Adivka?
Are you looking at the map?
Yeah, I'm looking at the map here. Because that was a hot spot, right? That was a big place of battle in the past.
Avdiivka was further south. That's fallen to Russian forces now, so we
Oh,
didn't get
gotcha.
all the
I'm
way
looking at
down
a
here.
different city. I apparently don't know how to pronounce anything. Yeah,
Andriivka?
yeah.
maybe.
Well, actually, in hindsight, that's a Ukrainian fault. Why would you name two cities that closely?
They've got a lot of cities that are very similar to the
Adivka
name. It's
and
a problem.
Andriivka? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, this is also one of at least two Andriivkas. There's another one further south, but we took this main road here, which was interesting because once you leave Kharkiv, you start to get into areas. The green on the map here is territory that Russia took at the start of the war. So you start to go through
Wow.
areas where all of a sudden there's small arms fire, like damage on buildings. You see where gunfire hit buildings and gas stations are blown up, and there's significant amount of minefields through these fields over here, not on the highway, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely changed as we got into Izium. And there's actually a really interesting dynamic here where you move from Kharkiv into the Donbass area here, and
Mm-hmm.
it gets poor. Eastern Ukraine is very poor.
Right.
And you can tell a difference. I mean, when you I don't know if you've ever had the good fortune of driving through Arkansas, but
Try to avoid it.
when you cross into, I don't know if it's still the case. It's been a while for me, but I remember a couple times, like we drove from Texas to Tennessee, and when you cross into Arkansas, the roads get worse. Like at the state line, it's like, oh,
Really?
now the roads suck, right? Like it's a noticeable difference. That was the same feeling going into the Donbass. It was a poorer region. Things are not as well kept. And it's not really a matter of like being closer to the war zone because it genuinely changes like at the border. So that was a pretty interesting dynamic.
It is very interesting. And so when you get closer to the front, can you see it on the ground? Like you're saying you saw small arms fire, but can you feel it? Is there a vibe shift? Do
The
the
vibe
people with
shift,
you perhaps, become more tight-lipped? Do they get a bit more nervous? Or is
there
it
were a
just
couple.
business usual?
Yeah, it changed. And to be clear, I did not experience small arms fire. That was damage from 2022. You just see the bullet holes
Right.
on buildings. Um, a bit of a vibe shift when we got to Kharkiv because these are people dealing with Russian bomb strikes at night.
Mm-hmm.
And the day after we left, they did take a pretty catastrophic missile strike that killed some civilians. So bit of a different vibe in Kharkiv. It didn't really change. When we got to Izium, there were drone nets up to protect the roads from Russian FPVs.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bit of an eye opener. But the guys I was with, for better or for worse, have been in some pretty nasty fights for quite a while. So I think they were a little jaded. For instance, the air alerts went off in Kharkiv. Woke me up because it's like an alarm clock. And I looked to my left and those guys were sound asleep, like just rolled over and went back to bed. So, they've been through so many much closer calls that, again, for better or for worse, they weren't shaken at all. There was a vibe shift down here, however. Leaving Izium was the big one. Here we got to meet with our first unit.
Mm-hmm.
We got to deliver equipment, which was one of the awesome things here. We met up with some elements of the 3rd Assault Brigade that are pretty heavily engaged here in the Liman direction. Nasty fights happening there. And we delivered some drones and got to go into some of their drone factories. And I say factory, they're buildings that have been taken over that you would drive right past and not give a second look. But they're assembling these drones 24/7 by the hundreds, thousands. I don't even know, like walls of drones.
Right. That's pretty close to the front too.
Well within strike range. Yeah, I mean, when you get out into this area, it's the Shahids overhead, and the Garans are a little smaller. Shahids, they're hitting things left and right. So by the time we got to Izium, and this was kind of a theme throughout, we were very fortunate to go to some areas that were pretty restricted. But by the time we got to Izium, we were meeting with units in sensitive unit locations. So the content side of that isn't great because you're not, most of these areas we weren't recording at baseline. Plenty of the areas we couldn't even bring phones into. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of kind of taking that experience and how it will help affect the content. But yeah, big vibe shift between Izium and Sloviansk. This was the drone tunnel. Not a great stretch.
So when you're driving on this road, do you see a lot of burned out cars, other things hit with drones, or how does this is maybe perhaps a question that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but I assume roads and sanitation are just kind of gone during war. So if a car gets hit by a drone, is it just pushed over to the side? It's just along the road, or is it cleaned up? How does that work?
Depends where you are. Again, the further you get from the front, the more it looks like any European city.
Right.
And I think I probably saw 3 or 4 burned out vehicles, maybe at max. And some of them, now Legion mentioned they're pretty quick to remove them for a couple different reasons. One, these roads, once we got past, especially in Izium and South, these are 2-lane roads, man. And when you put up a drone net over a 2-lane road, there is no room for a burned out car. Like that shit's got to get out of there fast. You got to go in, you got to haul that out, or it's going to clog the road. And clogged roads in this area of the front is a recipe for a lot of people to be killed.
How effective are the drone nets? And when you say Izium was covered in drone nets, how covered? Because I'm envisioning not necessarily like how Springfield is covered in the dome, right? Is it like that almost, or is it less? You are opening up your files for everybody, just let you know. But is it like that, or is it more so only critical pieces are covered with the drone nets? Do the drone nets do they also have an end? I would ask, or are they kind of open on the ends?
Roads. So the drone nets cover roads. I'm going to try to open up some pictures here to show everyone. This is one of the pictures from Izium.
Got it.
Oh, wow. All over the place there with the zooming. That doesn't help anyone. So the drone nets are over roads. There are other areas where as you get near the front, they're covering command posts and artillery firing points and things like that. But they just cover roads to protect the vehicles. So the buildings to the side are can get hit. In terms of the effectiveness, they are very effective against drone dropped munitions, so long as the bigger munitions like mortars and mines and things like that will get hung up in the net and either detonate well above ground or not detonate. Russia has started using smaller ones that are, like the size of a Red Bull can.
Right.
Those will fall through here, but it's a much smaller detonation. So you see some nets that are even have tighter gaps. These are not effective against large Russian drones like Shaheds and Lancets. They will go right through it. Just the kinetic energy coming down will bring the net right on top of the target. But for the lightweight FPV drones, these are effective. Most detonators right now are not necessarily impact. It's kind of like a lighter impact type fuse to where it will detonate when it hits the net. So what they have to do say they really wanted to get after one of these trucks, they would have to fly the drone into the net, detonate, and then have other drones come into that hole.
Wow. Okay.
And they do that in certain areas. Now, as this gets closer to the front, what Ukraine is doing is they're building this net further and further and further back to get ready as the front moves west. So as you get closer to the front, these nets cannot be maintained because, of course, you see somebody starting to put up a net. Russia goes after the guy doing that.
Right.
But they are effective. And to your point, there are entrances. You have to enter and you have to exit these nets, and that's a weak point that Russia and Ukraine exploit. I mean, Russia is setting these things up in areas of the rear as well, and we've often seen recon drones watching those entrances and exits, and they either hit them right when they come out or they follow vehicles in.
Wow. So, and I assume these FPV drones are trying to kill civilians more often than not.
I don't think you could say that definitively. The FPVs have shorter range. You're talking about, for the most part, 30 kilometers and in. And when you get out here, even the closest we got along this drone road right here, 20 kilometers. So drones are striking this road, but this is the main military supply route. There are civilians out here, no doubt.
Right.
But Russia does have terror weapons at their disposal, right? Especially the long range strike munitions, and we've no doubt seen videos of Russia targeting civilians with these drones. But there are a ton of military targets that they can go after here as well. So a good explanation I heard as we were driving, and this will come into play here in a second, is you want to be the least juicy target.
Got it. Right.
Like there's a lot of things that can be hit. You just want to be the
juicy target, though. Were you worried? Because you are a juicy target. I mean, you're kind of like the voice of America.
So, joking aside, we didn't advertise or really tell anyone that I was going ahead of time. It's pretty tight-lipped for that reason. It wasn't a concern so much of like being targeted on the front, but there are Russian sympathizers in Ukraine, and there are people that Russia has in the past paid criminals to hurt or kill people. That it's a security risk that we just didn't want to mess with. And then the fewer people we told, the more areas I'd be able to go to because it wasn't on anyone's radar. So yeah, we didn't really share that ahead of time. In fact, I didn't publish anything about it until I was out of the country.
Right. So my next question for you is, after last episode, I was teasing you because you were like, yeah, you were very happy. People kept coming up to me saying, I watch your videos. Other people being like, oh my gosh, it's you. And I was teasing you saying that, you're like Beyonce, right? My question is, did you encounter anybody who was not a fan, or perhaps was a Russian sympathizer who was like, oh, that guy?
The vast majority of people, I should say, did not know who I was or what I did, anything like that. So I want to start there. But just the nature of where we were going, like we were linking up with units that we've supported in fundraisers. So like there's some connection there at least, right? And within those groups, there were a lot of people that I hadn't met before that did watch the channel or were familiar with the content. That was incredibly humbling. And then we got a couple of messages as we left country. Legion would get a couple of messages of like, oh, you were with Preston? And that's really cool. But no, right. Did not run into anybody that said, how dare you, or anything of that nature.
Do you feel, after meeting these people, knowing that they watch your videos for updates, do you feel a higher sense of responsibility or an inclination of not just higher responsibility in making these videos, but also more optimism, and that if they're watching you willing to stay in the fight, then who are you to ever become cynical over their fight?
I hadn't really thought about that second part. For the first part, yeah. It was a couple of years ago. I first had someone who's a foreign volunteer mention something about watching the videos, and it was like, oh, shit. I mean, you got these fake numbers on a screen, right? Like, what does 10,432 even mean in terms of views? And I still kind of struggle with recognizing that each one of those is a person. So when you get a chance to meet these people in person, it's pretty powerful. Double, triple, or quadruple that when it's somebody saying that they're watching the videos to figure out what's happening in the war that they're fighting. So that's, yeah, I got, out here talking to these big badass soldiers that are doing incredible things. I got a little emotional a couple times. But it's the nature of the beast. So yeah, it definitely drives home. I would say more of a responsibility. It's not that I didn't feel that beforehand, but just kind of hammers it in a little bit more. And I've said it before, man, the audience is smart. Like, so much of social media and the internet is like, I feel like just junk and garbage and people are just yelling at each other in the comment sections. Like, we get that too. But when you meet some of the people that are watching this stuff, like, holy cow, dude, are you kidding me? Like, They're smart. They're decision makers. They're leading decisions in some of these areas. It's wild.
When we were at the Pentagon together, they kept coming up to you, recognizing you. So you definitely do have an impact all around the world. That is very true. In terms of like day-to-day life, these people in Izium, in the photo you showed, are going about their day-to-day life, right? They're commuting to work. They're doing whatever. How does that work? Do they just put the war in the back of their mind? And in what ways? Because I assume they try to go on as if the war isn't there. Would you say that?
Yeah. Yes and no. So when I said there was a vibe shift in Kharkiv, we talked to his soldiers. Call sign is Reg. He's a British volunteer fighting with fighting with the Azov International Battalion. He said that he loves Kharkiv. He's made that his home because it's a mix of people that understand the war is very real and can feel the impact of it, but they're not necessarily on the front. Mentioning kind of what he was getting at is the further west you go, the easier it is to put the war out of mind. And then the further east you go, the harder it is to do that. I mean, look, you could hear artillery in the background. When we got to Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, you could hear artillery and strikes. Like, you cannot ignore the war happening at that point. And there's soldiers everywhere. Like, everywhere you look, there's barbed wire or some mechanized a tank drives by. Like, you cannot ignore that the war is happening. Buildings left, right, and center that have been hit the night before. I think there's a resilience there that you kind of wonder what this would be like if it was a 3, 6, or 9-month war. But now that it's entering 4 years, there's a lot of people across Ukraine that they're doing everything they can to put their head down and live a real life while they can. I mean, there was a mall in Kharkiv. We went there for lunch, and it would look like a mall out of the United States, like nothing out of the ordinary. We went to the awesome food court, and there were, arcades and gyms and all that, and kids walking around. The next day, just down the street, 2 missiles impacted and killed people. So it's this, I don't think you could get to that point in a short period of time. I think it takes a lot of, like, that's the only, what's the alternative? Right? Leave. And some people can, and some people have. Most people can't or won't. That's hard to grasp still for me. Just the ability to go back to, quote, normal life in between missile strikes.
Right. And I assume, like you said, it's gone on for 4 years now. Birthdays come, funerals come, weddings. Life does go on, even if, it feels impossible that they can.
Yeah.
In what way did you find, like, how prevalent were veterans in society? I'm watching Mad Men. I don't know if you've ever seen Mad Men. It's on HBO Max now. Yeah. But what struck me, and then I was picking my grandfather's brain on this, is that they were all veterans in there. Don Draper, he pulls out his medal, the big first episode, right, from his desk. But every single one of these guys served, whether it was in World War II or Korea. And that's just how it was. How prevalent are they in Ukraine? Like, and what is their role in society?
Everywhere. And I don't think veteran is probably the right way to put it, because they're all wearing uniforms.
Right.
I mean, everywhere. It's every restaurant we went into, every gas station we stopped at, everywhere there were soldiers in uniform. Because, they get a break from the front for a week or a weekend or whatever, and they're going to see family, take a little time off. So, I mean, every direction at all times, there were people in uniform. So it's not, you can't even separate it out at this point. It's a part of the society is in a sense militarized. That, I mean, we had a coffee meeting with a couple folks the last day we were there, and tiny little coffee shop. I feel like 10 soldiers came and went while we were there. And that's not even counting the ones that are in civilian clothes, because they're not wearing uniform all the time. You can't tell how many of those guys were military as well. So it's pervasive. And the billboards are recruiting for the military. There's a lot of kind of pride around, like, different drone companies had up their billboards advertising their stuff. So it's everywhere.
In different times in the States, you would often see people who are wearing the uniform. They'd be thanked for their service. And I've heard some soldiers say it's awkward. Others be like, whatever. Does that happen there? Or is it kind of just like, we get it? Is it like, yeah, all right, everyone here,
I don't speak Ukrainian, so I don't know what the interactions were out and about. But in the smaller settings, when we'd be meeting with people, you did hear that a lot, just from the groups I was with, just to thank you for what you're doing. I don't know how widespread that is, to be honest. But I got the sentiment. I mean, there was certainly no frustration or anger visible towards the military, which is interesting as you move east, because, like, they're everywhere, for better or for worse. They have to be there. And in terms of, like, local businesses and the locals, I didn't really pick up on any negative sentiment.
Well, that's good. And did you find yourself getting a little jealous? So everyone else is getting thank you for your service. Did you find you're like, what about me?
Come on.
You're like, come on. But that ties me into my next question. How did your experience here compared to your experience in Afghanistan? Obviously, you were not an active combatant here in Ukraine, but you were in Afghanistan. And so do you have any reflections? We know I'm not denigrating your service. We know this is a different war, right? But what was similar? What was like, what took you back, and what was like completely different? And what were you like, thank God I am not in Ukraine? Or what were you like, it was worse in Afghanistan? Were there anything like that? Was there anything like that?
Yeah, the soldiers are the same. You could grab any
Mm-hmm.
one of the guys we hung out with and drop them into Strong Point Dog in Zari, Afghanistan, 2010, and they would have been telling the same dirty jokes and pranking each other just the same, like 1-to-1, like across the board. Not just the Americans that we met and foreign volunteers, but the Ukrainians as well. Like soldiers are soldiers, and they fit in across the board. So that felt to me, that's a very kind of like comforting. I don't know. I always feel very safe and very at home around that, and brought back a lot of memories of just our guys. I texted a handful of friends while I was there that I'd served with, like, you'd love these guys, like, you know. The other similarity, it has to do with the luck of the draw aspect. In Afghanistan, it was IEDs, and it was just a matter of like if the one you stepped on went off or not in some of these areas. And that there's a similar piece to that in Ukraine when it comes to these drone strikes. Now, there's things you can do near the front to limit your exposure. Same thing with IEDs. Like you can bring metal detectors and dogs, this, that, and the other. But maybe it's just a bigger like thing about war is there's an aspect of luck that like when it's your time, it's your time. And that you forget about that when you're away from it. But being back there, you're kind of like, you can do everything right. Like for instance, you can be taking. Actually, I'll tell a story from Afghanistan that I think does this well. We had mortars incoming one night, and one hit the base, and they said everybody move to these bunkers, which were a series of like concrete barriers with a ceiling, a concrete top, and some American contractors we had went in there, and they were just standing near one side of it, and one of the mortars landed at just an angle that the shrapnel like went in and ricocheted off the side and killed 4 of them. Like they were in a bunker. If they had been outside of the bunker, they would have survived. But because they were in the safest place on the base, they died. And there's a little bit of that in war where like they did everything right. They did what they were supposed to do. And it's, the damn mortar fell 1 degree in this way instead of that way, which has to do with a gust of wind, or if the guy who hung the mortar in the tube had sweaty hands or dry hands at the time, right? That's a piece of this as well. But outside of that, those are probably the most comparison I could come up with is just the soldiers are the same.
Well, that's good. Not the killing. Would you say the drones are kind of like air IEDs in a sense?
They're worse.
Because I know they have mines, but
yeah,
these things can find you.
Yeah, they're worse because they look for you and come get you. In fact, that kind of speaks to Sloviansk here. When we got into this area, we were staying at a called a safe house with some folks, and we were talking about not wanting to be the juiciest target. When we pulled up, and it was 3 or 4 vehicles. This is after curfew, right? Early morning hours. Pulled up outside of this house we were going to stay at that looks just like any other house. And there were like, 4 of us total staying there. And it's a military vehicle. Like from the air, they can see that it's vehicles moving at night, which is already a bit of an indicator. But then the second part is we had electronic warfare jammers across the hood of all these trucks. So that's another check in the box of like, that's a military thing. So we opened the doors to get out at this house and heard the buzzing overhead of a Russian drone. So they had us immediately just scatter across the road, try to get behind some cover, recognizing that the target there would be the vehicles or maybe the house, but not for a drone that size. They're not really going after an individual on the ground. So as we got across the street, and just a little dirt road, the drone overhead was intercepted and shot down. So the time of its interception, it had turned around, which is You don't want that. That usually means like saw something, go back and hit that thing. Now, whether it was us or somebody a street over or 2 kilometers away, who knows? But that was a bit of an eye opener. Like, welcome, you're here now. Yeah.
When they're intercepting these drones, are they using a full-on interceptor for them, or do they have something smaller? How are these drones being intercepted?
This is
That
called
is
the P1 Sun. It's an interceptor built by Skyfall. We got this while we were there. So this is a 3D printed version. It sits on the ground like this. Has its actual warhead is back here, but it launches up and then it can fly around and intercept. It detonates. If it detonates within 10 meters, it'll bring down a Russian drone. So they're
wow.
churning these things out. I don't know what was used to intercept that one that night, but given that it just blew up in midair, it wasn't gunfire. It was probably something like this. This is, of course, a small size. This is, in reality, it's probably 2 feet tall.
Got it.
But it's stuff like that they're using to intercept these drones.
Interesting. Okay. And when Chris Cappy was in Ukraine, he reported feeling terrified hearing these drones. Did you feel the same way? Was that your only interaction with drones, or was that just the most known? Did you always feel hunted, or?
I didn't really feel hunted at all. Again, the guys that I was with have been doing this and dealing with this for a long period of time. So I'm really looking at them and their feelings and, making the decision to go into certain, there were a couple things that we were going to do that we ended up not doing because the risk was too high. And for instance, we were getting ready to go to a certain location and they said, hey, just so you know, this is 50-50. Like, what does 50-50 mean? They said half of the vehicles are going to get hit on the way out. Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to do that. 50-50 is if I'm in the vehicle that gets hit. And it's like, well, no, I don't want to. That's not, there's no need to take any sort of, nobody benefits from that. Right. So, we got out there to Slavyansk, we got out there to Kramatorsk. These are areas that are getting hit pretty regularly. I never got the feeling that I specifically was being hunted by any stretch, or the people that I was with were any different than everyone else being hit all the way across. So we weren't standing out from what I could tell. That Shahid was the only one I was outside, and no, there are others in Kyiv. It never felt personal, if that makes sense. It's just like, this is going on, and I'm just happen to be there.
Oh, well, I'm glad you didn't take it personally. That's good.
In terms of the being hunted, right? Like,
right.
I'm nothing. There were much more valuable targets they were looking for and striking those nights.
Right.
So like, it felt weird being there. But again, looking to the guys to your left and right that are confident and know where to go and what to do really kind of puts you at ease.
So you met a lot of these veterans, people who've been through a lot. But did you talk to any civilians?
Yeah. Start to finish, a lot of interactions with civilians. A handful of them were involved with aid organizations. So got to meet up with folks from, we picked up and dropped off drones from Ukraine aid operations, a ton of drone interceptors from Ziggy's Paw, and then some trucks from Car for Ukraine. The civilians that's probably 15 different civilians in that group. And then everywhere we went, there were kind of similar interactions. So most of the focus was with military. That's who we spent. Like, a lot of the interactions with civilians were shorter, but with military, like, you're driving in the car for 8 hours and talking about everything that comes to mind. But a handful. There's also not a lot of English speakers in Ukraine, especially when you compare with other like European countries. How when you go to France, we get spoiled because like a lot of people speak English.
Well, you got to deal with the attitude first.
Once they drop the attitude and and get past you not speaking French, which I get it. I'm sorry, I'm awful in other languages. It's nothing like that in Ukraine. There's very few people that speak English. So my interactions were kind of limited in that sense. We had people who could interpret, but we were intentionally trying. I mean, again, a lot of the people we were linking up with are folks that I'd interviewed on the channel before, and they, at the very least, had like pretty workable English.
Were you moved by anybody? You know, they say everybody's the same everywhere you go, right? But were you moved by anyone's story, anyone, you talked to him for a while and you thought, oh, this guy is just like me, you know?
A lot of them are, and that's what I have a video coming out soon where it's just Legion and I driving through the drone tunnel, and you get pretty personal when you're like, we're good, right? Like this should be okay, right? Yeah. Conversation veers into some unique areas, and there was one there that we're going to publish it, so and ran it all by him and everything ahead of time. But for one, they're all like us, and we missed that, and I'm excited to put that video out because I think it'll show folks just how normal all these guys are. At the end of the day, they just want to be with their families, they just want to hang out, they just want to have fun, they don't want to do this, but they feel a need to, or an obligation, a moral obligation in a lot of ways. So they're all like us. You could sit down and have a beer and just joke with them. And some of them would be good friends, and others, like, you wouldn't have the same interests. So that's one thing. Legion, though, his story was pretty powerful for me. He in summary said he went to Ukraine seeking death, and in the process found life. So said he wasn't in a great spot, and had some friends going over and went over and joined the fight pretty early in 2022, and was, for lack of a better term, kind of reckless with how he operated, just kind of expecting, I'm not coming home, so why be super careful? And in the process of that, meeting people and seeing the cause he was fighting for and what he was fighting against, it changed his mindset to the extreme other side, where he has since had one or two more kids, and is all about, wanting to be there for them. So that was pretty, and that's one of these things in war that I think is kind of, it's dark but fascinating, is the extremes, where there's very few other things where you get that, where it's you can have that mentality shift, that mindset shift so drastically.
Where is Legion from? I don't know
Texas.
if you... Texas,
yeah.
Wow. And he goes all that way, and that's very moving. Do they have plans to come back to the United States? But you said he had kids. I assume he found love in Ukraine as well.
He's back now. He's he goes back and forth regularly.
I see.
Yeah, so he had some longer trips over there at the beginning, and has done some longer trips, but it's a lot more back and forth.
Yeah. Does he pay for that out of pocket, or does Ukraine pay for him to go home and come back? Really?
Yeah, out of pocket, yeah.
And so he just fights because he feels deep down inside that it is, perhaps now feels deep down inside that it's what's right to do.
Yep. A lot of different personal reasons tied up there, but yeah.
And does the Foreign Legion, do they get paid at all?
Okay, good shift here. Foreign Legion has been disbanded, and actually got to interesting dynamics there. They developed a bad reputation as an organization because of kind of lack of oversight, and a lot of what was pointed to was there's been an influx of Colombians coming in, and like borderline, like closer to mercenary than anything. Like they're looking for a paycheck, and they just come in and they don't care. And we saw graffiti in certain areas. I didn't see any graffiti, and all of a sudden you're seeing Spanish words. I was like, that's weird. What's that about? He said, it's the Colombians, man. Like, and they got a bad reputation for that. I don't know all the details of it, but the Legion, as it was structured, was built under the Ukrainian military intelligence. That has been disbanded, and the soldiers are able to go out to whatever units they want. Within Azov, we've done some work with the International Battalion, which is a separate unit. And there's one of the core pieces here, my understanding, is there wasn't a ton of vetting in the International Legion. And with that, you expedite people that can come in. But with that, you're going to get some bad apples. And bad apples give everyone a bad name. And eventually they said, enough's enough. They just split it out. So anybody that's there can stay there. I don't know the exact details, but International Legion, no longer a thing. But if they sign a contract with the Ukrainian military, which they can through the Legion and they can through Azov International, then yes, they do earn a paycheck while they're there. It's not a lot. I want to say it was like $1,200 a month. You could work. You would make more minimum wage here in the States. Is probably the best way to put it.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Yeah, that is a lot. And so you're just in it to do it, and that's how it goes then.
Any number of reasons, yeah. And an interesting part. I mean, you get everything, right? People that are seeking adventure. To be blunt, there's probably people that want to feel what it's like to kill somebody else. I mean, it's not like you can just walk into the country and say, I want to kill Russians. And they're like, great, here you go.
They just say, yeah, join the club.
But other people that are maybe looking for for lack of a better term, they're done. And maybe they don't want to pull the trigger themselves, but are looking to maybe put themselves, I think of police-assisted suicide. Mm-hmm. It's a way to do that. Maybe feel like you're doing something on the way out. I mean, again, all the way to like the core defending democracy, right? And standing up for the oppressed, everything you get in there. Everybody I interacted with was more in the camp of wanting to stand up for what's right, feeling a need to contribute. But yeah, they share. There are people that come over there that for the wrong reasons, put it bluntly.
So when you tell your wife, I'm going to Ukraine, was it met with joy or was it met with dread? Or she like, he's back on this bullshit? How does that go? How do you convince her to let you go?
Megan's awesome. It's been a long conversation. The way this one came about specifically was some of the fundraisers we had done, soldiers I've been in touch with, and some of them had mentioned that it would mean a lot if I ever had a chance to get over there, and that it would be, just meaningful to soldiers and units and some of the civilians. And that put it in perspective of there's a little bit more. I'd always viewed it as like an experience for me, or to share content with people, to learn more about the conflict. But when they put it in the context of it will actually mean something to people that are fighting, it's like, all right. And unintentional guilt trip is maybe the way to phrase that. So that changed my mindset to, I want to find a way to do this. The connection with the Legion then made it a lot easier because I wasn't having to piece this together from scratch on my own. And he just like, hey, we got this. Just tell me who you want to meet and where, and we'll put this together. That made it easier. I mean, he had a vehicle and on ground in Ukraine. So we got there and we had a car. That made it easier. So it had been a conversation with Megan for a while. This brought it to the forefront, and she was supportive. I didn't do a good job of explaining where we were going and when. I had some friends recently, shout out Nick Laidlaw, that had invited me on a trip, and they were in Pokrovsk, man. Like they went into frontline positions and were having Russian drones impacting outside their building. He got stuck in a position because it was too dangerous to leave. Another mission he was set to go on with a team, and like that truck got blown up and killed 4 people or something. It's wild. And I was telling Megan, like, well, I don't want to do that. Like that's not the plan. And I didn't do a good job of articulating the risk in Sloviansk and Kramatorsk and getting out there. Because in my mind, that is a world apart from going to a frontline position. But again, technically there's people dying there every day. So as we got closer, and I was kind of explaining the agenda, we had to talk through that a bit, but yeah, start to finish, super supportive, understandably nervous, but yeah, she's been great, man.
Well, that's good. I tried to not text you while you were there because I was like, what if he's hiding from a drone and then all of a sudden his phone goes off and then
Bing! Yeah,
I'm the
you would
one
live
that's
with
like,
that.
yeah, I'd be like, oh no, I don't want to do that. So to wrap us up here, how close did you get to the front line at your closest?
Um, oh, we almost drove to Dopropelia. That was a mistake. Let me back up here real quick. Probably 15 to 20 kilometers on
Got
a
it.
route.
Why
But we
did you
were
almost? Why was that a mistake? That almost drove
because
to
these
Joe
roads,
Propili.
and this is like one of the big takeaways for me is how precarious the situation is in the east. These are 2-lane roads keeping an army supplied that is trying to stop the Russians. It's a 2-lane road, covered with drone nets. And to your point, one gets hit, road is clogged. And it's not just like Preston and an SUV driving down there. It is everything keeping these units supplied. So if you want to get to some of these areas, not through the main road through Izium, and now the roads in the south have been shut off, you have to go west. And when
Right.
we were leaving, we did go west. And these are 2-lane dirt roads weaving through farm fields.
Mm-hmm.
And like the type of 2-lane road where if another vehicle is coming near you, sometimes you have to seriously think about pulling off the road because there's not enough room for both of you. You
Wow.
cannot sustain a military doing that long term. So the western roads here, that's a real problem. If this gets cut off, it's a real problem going west. But what happened was we had left Kramatorsk and we were driving west to the Dnipro. So we're doing this route here, and it's not highways, it's back roads. And at one point, we made a turn somewhere around here and drove for about 5 minutes and beep, stopped. And the guy said, "We got to turn around. We're going to Dopropelia," which is one of the hottest areas of the front.
Why'd you have to turn around? Oh, because he was
Because
going
we
the
took a
wrong way.
left turn instead of a right turn. Or
Got
we
it.
took a left turn instead of going straight or something. It was like the roads, again, these aren't like major intersections with signs everywhere. These are back country roads. So there's
Right.
not like a sign that says the Dnipro this way, 50 kilometers, Pokrovsk that way, 30 kilometers. It's just an intersection in the dead of night. You can't see anything. And it looks the same in every direction. And you're looking at your GPS, which doesn't work in most of these areas because it's being jammed. So we'd
Right.
be driving down these backcountry roads. Your phone is just, it doesn't function.
Right.
You can tap into Wi-Fi to make calls and such, but the GPS will show you at best just stalled out, at worst in a different country. So
Right.
it's a mix of jamming or spoofing. So we'd be driving thinking we've got 5 more kilometers to go before we need to turn, and we'd miss the turn because the GPS had been jammed.
Right.
So yeah, you're navigating dark backcountry roads without GPS.
So presumably you weren't that close to the front lines, but what is a life like on the front lines? How does that function? Do they? I assume Ukrainians and Russians are not in that close a proximity to where they can see each other as they're shooting.
Yes and no. Depends on the area. So there's areas like Pokrovsk and Kupiansk and some areas in Liman where it's best referred to as a gray zone, where it's kind of interchangeable. Like in one basement, you have Ukrainian soldiers strong pointing to try to secure that block, and the next building over in that basement are Russian soldiers. So in some cases, they're literally house to house, rooting each other out, one direction or the other. In other areas, it's more open fields that separate the lines. So you're talking about 5, 10, 15 plus kilometers between like the static positions. But Russia is constantly pushing all along the front where they're trying to infiltrate 1 to 4 soldiers at a time, which is why most of the drone footage you're seeing right now are individual Russian soldiers in the middle of a field or the middle of a tree line getting hit with Ukrainian drone. So another takeaway here for me is this bin is the area that this chunk is what is being discussed. Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, Liman is the area being discussed as being handed over to Russia. This
They
is
don't even
Donetsk.
control it.
This is Donetsk, correct. But it's so much more than just some open territory back here where Ukrainians live. Ukraine has developed in this area an industrial scale killing machine. Like it is so effective what they're able to do. The lines are not manned side by side with Ukrainian soldiers. There are huge gaps in the front that are only watched over by drones. And and they're very effective. The way that they're able to get drones in there to overwatch the battlefield, to strike and kill Russian soldiers without risking or losing Ukrainian soldiers' lives is unique to the way that they have developed this defensive belt. And it will not be the same if they shift 20 kilometers west. So not only is giving this up militarily a bad idea, it's politically unfeasible for Zelensky. And there might be military commanders that say, to hell with that. Right. We're not going to try to set up this same. I mean, the Russians are losing so many people out there, man. It's insane to just give that up and allow that. It's a defensive belt. To walk away from that would be madness right now.
When the war first started, it was a thing where captured Russian soldiers would have to call home to their mom, right, to let them know where they were. And the Ukrainians would notify Russian next of kin, dead soldiers, if they could identify them. Is that still going on? Or we're 4 years into this that any persuasion effort on the Russian population has been given up?
No, I think there's still persuasion efforts ongoing. The units that we were talking to spend a lot of time trying to take prisoners because you can get information out of the prisoners. And I mean, to a degree, like, you know, we crossed this line, I don't know how many years ago, where it was like, what is one more dead Russian soldier, to be blunt? Like,
right.
It doesn't change the calculus at all. So given the opportunity, they do try to capture just because it's better from a military sense. In terms of the calling home, I'm not sure how that works or what they push with that. There is a process where they're interrogated and then they're pushed through kind of a humanitarian window to get medical treatment, to get food, all of that. Some of these guys, so we actually got a chance to talk with the dudes that were clearing this pocket right here. Mm-hmm. And they were running into Russian soldiers that had been holed up in basements for 4 months. They were being resupplied with drones. So because this area got cut off, Russia was flying one-way attack drones in with water and batteries and food and ammunition and crashing it into the buildings. And these guys would go out, pick it up, and hunker down in the basement and try to survive. So they'd all changed into civilian clothes. They didn't bring a bunch of changes of uniform forward. Some of them were seemingly ready to be out of the fight, but others were very much hardened, and like it took a barrel in their face to give up and surrender. So it's still a mix in terms of like the quality of the soldier and who actually wants to be out there and who doesn't. But there's still prisoners being taken pretty regularly.
So with aid drying up from the United States and Europe not being able to supply as quickly, did you find the situation was dire? Do you think they have it? Do you think they can sustain no American aid for much longer? What was the vibe there?
I got a good picture here for you. We got a chance to look at some unmanned ground vehicle labs. And this might be kind of hard to see. But there is a UGV right here. And we said, oh, what's that one? And he said, that's the American model. It's shit. We can't use it. And it's sitting covered in snow with a tarp in the corner being used for parts.
Why is it so bad? Why can't they use it?
It's a combination of the wheels aren't right, the drivetrain's not right, it doesn't have the right carrying capacity, the communications aren't right, all sorts of different things just didn't work. And on top of that, it's one. So if this one works, and it probably costs $50,000 on the low end, right? Because we hike, it's probably a lot more than $50,000. They can't get the parts to replace it because it's all these like very unique military grade US components. They don't have spares. Right. And then if they do love it and it's like the best thing since sliced bread, cool. There's no more coming because like they can't afford to buy another one. Right. So the American stuff in this case was in the corner not being utilized. Now there is a lot of American stuff that is needed. Patriot interceptors are a big one. Right. My take in talking with everyone without asking a question explicitly was they're just not paying attention to that. It's not, we hang on the president's every word here of like, is that going to be more aid or no? Or when's this next package? Interacting with the soldiers really from brigade level down, It's just not. It can't be a consideration. They're
Mm-hmm.
moving forward with what they can produce right now, and
Right.
everything I saw out east, all of the killing being done, the vast majority was with Ukrainian-made equipment. Vast majority. Those
Right.
interceptors, Ukrainian. Those drones, Ukrainian. Those unmanned ground vehicles, Ukrainian. Now, they're at some point with some artillery in the background. It could have been Ukrainian, could have been American, could have been British. I don't in terms of like who provided the equipment, but the majority of what's being done right now is with Ukrainian equipment in the sense of like at the front. The vibe I got from the people was there was no expectation that this was going to end anytime soon. Not like a one more push or we stop them here or one more
Right.
year even. Very much like this is a long haul and we're just on track. We have to keep going. But with that they're going to keep going.
Right.
What do you do when the person that you're trying to stop just launched missiles into a shopping center?
You have to keep moving.
You can't stop. And so many of these soldiers have family that are under drone and missile attack every single night. So like it's not the same conversation of should we still be in Afghanistan or should we still be in Iraq? Well, if we aren't, what risk is that to my family back in Tennessee or Chicago or Texas? This is the feeling of if they stop or if they give up much more territory, their families could die in other portions of the country. Like, and they're watching them under attack. So I didn't get the impression that anyone I interacted with, at least, was there's no giving in, no giving up.
Right. Well, I think that concludes us. Is there anything you wanted me to ask you about, or anything you wanted to tell the audience?
No, just is a lot, man. It was chaos, start to finish. Trying to meet so many people, didn't get to see as many people as we wanted. Wished I could have seen more. It's a short trip, and yeah, it was invaluable in terms of you spend a lot of these guys we'd interviewed and I've text with, and they're all very open. I've never thought that they're withholding anything or trying to spin a narrative or anything. But when you spend 6 hours together, you end up just talking about stuff that doesn't come out otherwise. And it really helped me better understand so much of the conflict in a good way. I mean, a big one that we talked about here was just how tenuous the situation is in the East. I can look at a map all day, but driving that road and realizing like, oh my God, this is what the 18 wheelers have to go down. And like, there's no good time to do it. Like we went at a time where the risk was lower, but like, it's a problem. Yeah, just good experience start to finish.
Well, very good. Maybe I'll have to go next time. Be the mayor of the world instead of just the mayor of America's mayor.
Promote yourself.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Oh, we got the dog joining in. Yep.
Oh, here we go. Well, folks, remember to like, comment, subscribe, become a member on YouTube. We have 23 members. It's the same number as Michael Jordan, the GOAT.
Yeah,
and we will see you next week. We actually have a lot of gossip to share next week, so we'll see you then.